There's a classic Brian Regan bit in which he talks about the Pop-Tarts should not have instructions, namely because the directions for Pop-Tarts are roughly toast the Pop-Tart for about maybe a minute, or you can microwave the Pop-Tart for 3 seconds. And he questions who in the world doesn't have the time to toast a Pop-Tart, and if your schedule is that tight, you probably need to make some serious life changes. And so, hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Brian if you're new around here, but if you're a returning subscriber, honestly, thank you so much for being back. Really appreciate you, and hopefully you enjoy this video. I thought I'd sit down and talk to you guys about the real reason why I don't enjoy rating, because I've seen some theories and opinions floating around the internet how I don't even do the rating, or I don't enjoy rating. All of these are not true in this regards. You can actually go look at past live streams here on this channel, because I actually do really enjoy difficult content, but I figured it would be a good video to sit down and actually kind of talk to you about the real reason why I don't enjoy the current raid scene in MMORPGs. Now, before we jump in, if interested, I actually talked about why I find player-driven economies vital to MMOs, and I'm also working on a video called the True Cost of Raid Culture in MMORPGs, and that's going to be coming to the channel real soon. You can actually check out the player-driven economy video now. I'll try to link it in the description, but I want to dive into this specific topic for you right now. I'm going to focus on this comment, but I'm only going to take the middle section of the comment. So Author Run writes, another great example you made was, what do you consider difficult content? World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XI, for the longest time, the thing that made the games difficult was time. How much time you could invest in your game or system. Now, in today's modern MMO, the biggest debate is what's happening is asking developers to respect the player's time. I absolutely despised Final Fantasy XI because of how it completely disrespects your time as the player back in 2002. Now, a lot has changed and still much slower than it is in any modern day game, but I did not realize back then, but it was one of the major reasons I jumped ship so quickly to other MMOs that came after it. But for a lot of players, time is more or less the most difficult part of any game. If a player feels the MMO game of their choice is not respecting their time, they will in fact look elsewhere. And thus you get the result of a casual versus hardcore argument. To follow up with that, as you are a father of 5, it baffles me that you have any time to invest in a game like New World. If this was not an issue, then Mythic Raiding, Savage Raids, and Ultimate Raids is what I would consider peak difficulty myself. Now, to jump in on this first and foremost, I saw another comment that was really interesting on my last video, and it was saying that if you want to get anywhere fast, go alone. But if you want to get further, go together. And I think that's an interesting perspective, and one that MMOs are ultimately trying to balance in terms of who they're for, what they're about, how they're different from what else is on the market. And to this point in the comment, the idea that, not respecting your time, there is a lot of choice out there on the market. You as a player have a lot of power in choice. And I think that's a big thing. That's something I'm going to explore in my next video. But I think choice is ultimately important. Where you choose to spend your time is a sign of what you love, for better or less a word. But for me, the difficulty of clearing a raid, actually, I never found it to be the content itself, but it's actually in the scheduling of the content. My whole day is scheduled. Meetings, work, family, weekends are scheduled, baseball games, soccer games, time with the wife. It's like everything has a spot on my calendar. In fact, if I ever showed you my calendar, it's filled up. There's barely any, white space, any blank space for me to think, to feel, and I have to kind of fight to carve those things out in my schedule. And so when it comes down to it, even playing games is something that I have to schedule. That's how I go about it. But in game, the experience in the game, I don't want a schedule. I want an escape. I want it to be a game. And we're going to explore some things because, especially in the last video, I saw a couple other comments. This is personally really interesting. But let's take New World again, right? Wars are scheduled. Invasions are scheduled. For me, easy pass. Don't care. I'm just not going to engage with the systems because I don't play them to have the same experience that I have in everyday life. I've seen that comment made against people who want to avoid a player-driven economy. Absolutely. I understand. I can actually relate to that deeply, right? But that's why I want more games and more options. Now, in an older video game, I talked about why I prefer MMOs on controller. And you can also find that video here on the channel. It all boils down to the same key principle. I work on a keyboard and a mouse. When I game, I want a clear separation from my life to my game time. Some might argue that that's what they want in their MMOs, and they don't prefer playing an MMO with a player-driven economy for this very reason. Where in my world, I actually don't manage markets, so I actually find markets and that kind of play a fun thing to do because their risk to me and my family is absolutely nil. I'm not gambling with money. I can gamble with assets in a game, and if it doesn't turn out well for me, well, no big deal, right? Like, it just doesn't have that big of an impact on me personally. Now, I asked the question in the last video about what is difficult content. Now, for you and me, I think it's possible that we come up with completely two different things. Is learning a rotation difficult? Is mastering it in the face of the mechanics difficult? For me, I've never really felt like that's been the roadblock. Could I always get better? Absolutely. Would I be better, especially on a specific job, if I wasn't working on like every single job in the game itself? Oh, absolutely. I think when you look at a jack of all trades, master of none approach, that kind of has defined my content for the last several years because of the service to the community that I've poured in and tried to make that happen. So there was always a kind of a cost to that as well. If I just wanted to sit down and master kind of one job, I probably would have been taking longer breaks in between then and now. But overall, people seem to really benefit from the work that I put into the content and the channel itself. Now, that being said, there's a lot of value in raid content. I've actually been a big supporter of it, and I fought back against those who present an idea or they're mad that a new raid tier or new ultimate is introduced because they've argued that it's just a small percentage of the community that's actually going to do that content. And I think that's kind of this casual elitism that I that I rail against as well. Not every bit of content needs to be for every player in the game. Elden Ring is a good example of this, where you see a lot of people pushing back on the fact that the game is difficult. Well, the answer is that some people want a difficult game. Some people want a game that they're going to have to throw themselves again, time and time again. Take Mega Man. Classic Mega Man, for me, is like one of the peak forms of entertainment that I've had in my gaming career. Mega Man would also just punish you for having not played the level. So there became down to that aspect, those mechanics of memorizing your way through the level, getting to the boss, doing it over and over again until you finally mastered it. Something I really enjoy. In fact, if you ever look at my wall, got a Mega Man right up on the wall itself, because Mega Man's awesome. But that aside, it comes down to this aspect. Like, if raiding didn't revolve around a schedule, which in the past it hasn't, and so it became very organic, became something to be able to step into and have some fun with. But if it didn't revolve around that key aspect, maybe I would be more interested in achieving it. But at the same time, based off of at least the last couple of years, I don't see that anywhere near or anywhere in my future that becomes something that I desire so much that I make it happen. And that's perfectly fine. You know, like, you don't have to agree with me. I'm not sitting here trying to convince you that my way is the right way. I'm not trying to sit here and say that I speak for all players out there. I don't feel like I represent the casual gamer. I don't feel like I represent the hardcore gamer, but I represent a hybrid within kind of that structure. Because the truth is, there really isn't a casual and there really isn't a hardcore. There's somebody who's maybe more dedicated or has more time to be dedicated, and there's somebody who wants to be able to kind of step in and do things their way. It's more of a spectrum than anything else. And the thing is that people move up and down that spectrum depending on what life has to throw their way. And so I end up tending to gravitate towards systems that, for me, like I've always said, I'll never be first, especially as a parent. Like, I cannot compete against the streamers and the big time content creators, because I cannot put in and dedicate that kind of time. Because also, when it comes down to the risk to the family, there's no guarantee that's going to pay out. There's no guarantee that all of you aren't, just running ad blockers on the channel and I don't see a penny from it. But I've never put in the time. I've never put in the effort expecting any kind of payout. And I've enjoyed that level of freedom in the content that I make. And And that being said, is that I recognize where my strengths and I play to those strengths are, as opposed to sit here and try to essentially be something that I'm not. And that's fine. You know, like at its core, it's interesting that people will try and gatekeep. And this isn't a Final Fantasy 14 thing. This is just a hands down gaming thing. The idea when you see gatekeeping happen, it amuses me to a degree, because it is just something that I always kind of go, why? Like, where is it really coming from? Because at the end of the day, the simple and most adult answer is, I don't care. I'm not going to watch it. Or, I don't care what this person has to say. It doesn't impact me. Gatekeeping has this weird hybrid blending out there. Maybe you have your own theories. You can always let me know what they are. But on that note, guys, I'm not here to waste your time. Thanks so much for spending some with me. I hope that you guys, if you are a raider, that you enjoy your raids. And I hope that if you're not a raider, that you don't let anybody tell you that you're playing the game the wrong way. That's just silly in my opinion. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you. Hopefully you have a wonderful day. Hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care.